I'm Stefan Baumann. I would like to invite you on a special journey to discover the splendor, encounter the grandeur, feel the excitement. Come along with me as we experience the thrill of painting outdoors. A 3-day journey that will change your art forever. In one of America's most stunning locations, Mount Shasta. Everything you need to know is on our website, www.stefanbaumann.com. Really, the secret to painting is a lot of practice. When you first do it, it doesn't turn out right away. And oftentimes we think, oh, I don't have any talent, I'm not very good. A lot of you, or some of you, have retreated into the other room where you can paint from photos because it's a little safer over there. Some of you venture now and then to just venture into the other room. But it's really difficult to paint from life. And I have students that they say they're really comfortable with painting from photographs, but painting from life is difficult. And when I give coaching, all the students have to work from life originally. And there's a few reasons, because some people will say, well, I can work from photographs just as well from life, but there's something different when you paint from life than when you paint from a photograph. There's always, you can't interpret from a photograph, because a photograph has already taken everything from 3D to 2D. Two-dimensional, and it's already flattened for you. And so you can see shape and form where when you're painting from life, you can't. You have to actually make that. And there's no form or edges, it actually is a three-dimensional object. And in the process of looking at something real and painting it real, you can actually start putting your own ideas into it. When you have to interpret what that line is and how that line goes, so you can start developing a style. Some of you are wondering, how do I develop a style? And one way that you do that is that you have to take a lot of practice. Just like signing your name when you got married. You have to practice that. What's your last name?
Waters. My original is Stefan, but now I am Waters.
Waters, right? Waters. So do you remember you practicing that name? Yeah. And at first it was really awkward. Yeah. But eventually it got really good. Yes. And then you started painting figures, and that was kind of awkward, and now you're painting a lot of figures. The more naked, the better. But anyway, so it's all about practice. And I have a lot of students who don't really get that sometimes. You know, they'll get, well, I put in a half an hour a week, and I go, really? Half hour? I have one student I was arguing with over the phone, who's one of my coaching students, and she goes, well, you don't seem to understand. I put a half an hour into playing the piano, play half an hour doing guitar, I play half an hour doing drawing, half an hour doing painting. That's all the time I have all week. And I go, yeah, you'll never get good at any of those. You have to choose. You have to have the desire to become an artist. And a half an hour a week isn't going to do it for you.
That's what Lindbergh says too.
What does he say?
Choose.
You have to choose it.
And it's a lifelong commitment.
It is a lifelong. Well, Churchill said it takes 2 lifetimes to be an artist. One to learn it and one to do it.
True.
So a lot of it is just that commitment. Now, you look at an artist like Bouguereau, who actually painted these beautiful French paintings. And he worked 6 hours just drawing hands and feet before he picked up the brush and started his paintings. If you listen to a concert pianist, they don't work a half an hour a day. They work 6, 7, 8 hours. That's all they do. And you can't be a pianist and you can't be a painter. You have to be one or the other. That doesn't mean that you can't develop to paint as something you do on the side. But having that commitment to become an artist is actually a commitment. It's like saying to yourself, I want to be in the Olympics. Well, you can't just kind of be in the Olympics. You have to be completely forward. And a lot of people are not ready for that commitment. A lot of people don't think it requires that commitment. But yet they look at their retirement and they go, what am I going to do with that time? And a lot of people are fearful of making that commitment in fear that that's not what they want. But the thing is with art, it's something we've always wanted to do. And so to make that kind of commitment to learn how to paint is a noble thing to learn. And to do it well, they make museums for people who paint well. I mean, nothing is more noble than that. So I invite you to really take on. And if we do a little exercise here, I mean, when we really look at these paintings, I'm going to bring these paintings we did today out. I mean, how much time have we really put into them? Maybe 2 hours. I noticed you kind of working on another painting, and then you came out back here and had a little lunch and chit-chat. I mean, that's the nature of these classes. But I mean, you know, you've probably put in a full hour of painting. A full hour. I mean, and you guys did extraordinarily well with that. So this kind of just shows you what you can do in an hour. Now, this is from life. And when I put this still life up, it was like, oh, cellophane. Now, you had no problem painting the teapot. Okay, everybody went well with that. And look at that. Who did that?
Me. Jan, nice.
And you worked half of those 2 hours you worked on that other painting. It's an hour and a half. Look what you have there. And look at this beautiful, I mean, this is supposed to be cellophane. If you just left it alone, people would think it was just kind of like a sheer fabric and stuff. And so it requires a little bit more time. Now, why did we use cellophane? Why did we put cellophane around this?
Because it has that crisp whites.
Cellophane has a definite look to it than plastic does. And plastic has different look than fabric. So the whole point of painting from life is to ask yourself, what makes it look like that? You know, you've got to have that curiosity. Leonardo da Vinci says, in order to be a great artist, you have to be curious. So you have to ask yourself, what makes cellophane look like cellophane? You started picking up all of that stuff, and it's one thing to do a silver teapot, but to wrap it in cellophane adds another layer of complex. Now, being an artist is actually being a problem solver. So when I put something down for you, that's a problem. And then you have to ask yourself, how do I fix that? Now, Becky earlier was saying, you know, over the last year, this is happening, and my back hurts, and life, and I'm just losing my little will to have that desire. And I said, yeah, I noticed that since last year when you guys went under the fire. I said, yeah, I noticed that with you, Becky. You just don't have that that you used to have. You know, and one way to do that is to make something really complex. Don't paint something, you were painting the little bear thing that we're doing. And I said, you know, it's really hard to have that desire when you're painting something that doesn't really inspire you. But how do you get inspired over something? You know, some of your students come in and they go, Stefan, I want to paint this. And I look at it and go, are you kidding? And they go, yeah, this is the thing I love the most. And I'm going, no, I don't like that. But if I told you that, you would lose your inspiration. So I'm like a little kid going, yeah, let's do it. See, I'm like that 4-year-old that you used to be. When you used to grab a sheet of paper and some crayons and you would go, let's go draw. And you would just draw. And then you tell a little 4-year-old kid, let's draw and sing. And they go, okay, what do I sing? You say, let's make up a song. And the little 4-year-old goes, yeah, let's make up a song. And shall we dance and draw and sing at the same time? They go, yeah. That's the enthusiasm you want as a child. That's what you want in your art, is that enthusiasm that we once had. But that goes away after a while. You become cynical and dark. Men take up drinking with their friends at the McDonald's, having their little meetings about why they didn't accomplish what they wanted to do in their life. And before you know it, time slips away, and you go, oh, now I'm just too old to get started. It's like, no, you want to be that 4-year-old. So when you bring something in and I go, you want to paint that? I don't sit there and go, I don't know if that's a good idea. I go, yeah, let's show me what it is about that that excites you. Because if you're not excited to begin with, your painting is not going to go anywhere. You have to expose yourself to art. You know, that's a good way of doing it. And I think that's one reason why we have, Google is wonderful, because you can expose yourself to anything instantly. Back in the day, they had museums, and a lot of the museums were set up for other artists to go to be inspired over. A lot of museums are there because artists make things beautiful, and in a world where there's no color and it's very drab, you can go to a museum and get uplifted. We listen to music to be inspired. So there's a lot of ways to get inspired, but the thing is, being inspiration is just something you can turn on within yourself in a moment. And people go, ah. But you know, if someone walked in and said, here, you've just won Publishers Clearinghouse, $7,000 a week for the rest of your life. You'd be like, oh! You go, screw painting, I'm going to the Bahamas.
I'll paint in the Bahamas.
I'll paint in the Bahamas. But the thing is, you could change your attitude very quickly. So I sat down with Becky and I said, okay, Becky. She goes, I just, you know. And I said, I'm only picking you because everybody goes through this. Well, I love you, but I mean, the thing is though, this is, what comes up is like, I'm not inspired. And the thing is, artist block is a real thing. It exists. And a lot of times, it exists because we can't see what's beyond it. It just becomes a block. It's a block. And so if you don't have any friends or anybody around it, it actually starts to get you kind of like uninspired, unmotivated, almost like you said, even to get up and go out for a walk is difficult. So you go out and meet your friends because you know you want to do something, you don't want to be a hermit. But what inspires you to go out at that point? And it could be for a lot of things. You could listen to some really great music that you haven't listened to. Listen to the 1812 Overture, and listen to the canons and the music and stuff, and show you how big life can be out there. But I said, so Becky, what do you want to paint? And she says, I don't know. She says, I want to paint this. And she says, I'd really love to paint the ocean. And I said, Becky, if you really want to paint the ocean, what are you painting a bear for? A teddy bear.
Because it wasn't set up as an ocean.
But the thing is, it wasn't what we did. But that was a homework assignment. See, the thing is, when you come into a situation like this and you're painting in the room, then you kind of take on that challenge. And you say, okay, I'm here, I'm going to take this on, I'm going to see if I can paint that. The problem solving. And then you go home and try to finish that up. But if it doesn't inspire you, don't finish it. Throw it into a corner someplace. It doesn't have to be done. And so like the bear painting, when you're in your slump, when you're feeling like, the bear painting was good, and it was good for an exercise, but that's all it should have been. Just put it in the garage. I mean, all artists are imposters anyway. We all have garages full of crap. But the professional artists don't show them to you, and you think, oh, they just arrived perfectly. But they all have these problems. It's how you get to it. So I said, so what would you paint? And he said, oh, I'd love to paint the ocean. So one thing about Google and about being surrounded by art for this many years, and I work with a lot of my coaching students this way, I go, let's Google that. And I know Frederick Waugh, one of the most incredible ocean painters in the world, ever. Gorgeous stuff. And so I flipped it open and I flipped it a couple. I said, Becky, what about this? She goes, oh, I like that. I mean, immediate change. She went from Stephen to Stefan in a moment. But wasn't it like a shift? And I'm like going, and don't paint a small little kind of paint a nice big painting. Get into it. You need the challenge. You have to stimulate yourself, and you have to ask yourself, how do I paint that? And then you go out there and you paint it. And you don't paint it kind of like a Xerox machine. You take big brushes and just fabulously paint it like crazy. Like a crazy woman would. Only the way you can. But the thing is, it's a lot of fun then. It becomes a challenge. And then you open up all kinds of problems, and then you have to fix them. And in that process you go, wow, I didn't know that. And you put another one and another one. Before you know it, you're out of your slump and you're on to something else. But you know, if you do the same thing over and over and over again, doing the same thing, expecting a different result, they call that insanity. Everything's great, but you're doing a lot of little tiny brush strokes. What we want to do is we want to kind of think big, smaller, smaller. When you first started your painting, I came over and I said, think about lights and shadows, big patterns. You started from the left-hand side and you were going to kind of work from left. And there are a lot of artists that do that really well. I look at some artists and I go, I don't know, they could have this, and you could tell they work from photographs, because they'll have like 3/4 of the picture done, and then this is all just blank canvas. And they'll see a little bit of an outline. And they'll just paint inch by inch by inch by inch. And that's just crazy. I just don't know how they do that. I have to cover everything. And I work with lights and darks, and that way you can see your patterns. So you kind of got it sketched in and stuff, but you have a lot of little lined things. And I told you, you need some bigger brushes and kind of do some verticals and horizontals. But in essence of what we were doing before, you've grown so much just on this. This weekly just challenges like this is actually good for you. So here again too, beautiful brush strokes. Beautiful brush strokes. What are you painting on? You don't ever want to paint on something that isn't like ready for a museum. Yeah, there are some really good papers, and if you go to the museum, they do have those. You know, they do have, if you look at Bierstadt, when they came out west, that's all they painted on was paper. And then when they came back, a lot of these papers were applied to canvas. So if you read the description, it'll say paper on cardboard or paper on canvas mounted on, paper, oil on paper, oil on cardboard, and then mounted on canvas. So they actually did that a lot. And the papers they used back then weren't really that archival. So anyway, but I always tell the students, you have no idea how well you paint unless you're really painting on the products that you need to work on. So when I hear students go, well, these are my practice paintings, and I go, no, you don't do practice paintings like that. You know, you can't practice and know that you're doing all you can do if your quality of your canvas or your paper or your brushes are not there. Because you're not really practicing then. You're guessing at it. You have no idea what it would be like on a better canvas, because you know when you paint on a really high-end canvas, it's a different feeling than on a cheap canvas. So you're not really practicing anything. You're practicing on becoming really good on cheap canvases. But you have to practice on really good canvases. And not only that, I told a student this morning, I said, so I'm going to give you a choice. I'm going to give you a choice to do your next practice. Now, you can just work on one of these little cheap Hobby Lobby canvases for $1.99, canvas boards, or I can give you a canvas that was hand spun by Gregorian monks with gold thread and hand painted and primed by the finest artists in Italy and aged 100 years. The canvas is $1,200 for an 8x10. So I said, okay, so if I give you that canvas, how much more are you going to be paying attention to that practice than if it's just a cheapie? When you have something at stake, you play harder. But looking at this, see, I don't know if you guys watched Mary do, but she'll darken the whole canvas, and then she started putting the lights in. Didn't you find that interesting to see how she worked?
Very, very nice for me to study her painting, yes.
Her technique, but she kind of like pulled the lights and shadows out of the dark base. And so that's a really nice way to work. The problem is in here is that you kind of got it all kind of muddy. That brown start that you put in is kind of bleeding through. And what we need to do is make the brown more gray, a little, to get more of that shadow quality in there. But again, it's a really good start. And then whose is this?
Grisel.
Okay, Grisel. Now, what's really beautiful about this, and I was watching you paint, because I've seen you paint in here. And I've seen you paint, you know, like, and then you go home and you do extraordinary stuff with it. Because, you know, you kind of get a feeling for it. So this time, you really kind of had the feeling from the beginning. I mean, you really got the color. You had that silver looking like silver. I mean, that's just a really beautiful color for silver in there. It wasn't really highly polished. Some people say, well, how do you paint silver? And it's like, there's no secret. It's just right there. This is and I told you, I wish the pot were a little bit shinier, because that's even harder to paint. But it's, you know, it's a really pewtered kind of finish on there. And then we started getting this. Now, this isn't really feeling like cellophane. It feels like plastic wrap. So the thing is, plastic wrap is a little lazier. Cellophane's a little stiffer. If you start getting tired with your process, it shows. If Becky's not inspired, it shows. It's like your painting is a reflection of how you are right now. And you have to generate right now. And if you're tired, you have to say, I've got to walk for a minute and walk, and then come back to your painting with that same curiosity. Because you were really curious at first. I had you at hello. But when I turned my back and you kind of petered out an hour into the thing, that's life, that's classes. Take a break, but while you're breaking, you need to sharpen. It's like, when I get back, I'm going to make those corrections. I'm going to make sure I get the cellophane. Don't just have lunch and forget it and then come back and be kind of in the same mood. Look at generating yourself so that you come back with a sharper edge. Clean off your palette. Don't look at all that mess that you had before you took a break. Get out your clean highlights and stuff and get a new brush. Some of you paint with paints that have been on your palette since the day you started classes. There's piles of alizarin crimson that I see popping up on everybody's palette every week for the last year. It's like the poor thing is just a big, rotten, multicolored ball of half-wet paint. And I go stabbing in there, and half of it breaks apart because it's so old. And I go, oh, I should put some new alizarin crimson on it. Yeah. It's kind of hard to paint without paint. So we had another homework assignment. The assignment was to create morning light over a table. Breakfast. How many of you did that? I think it's down here. So, rather than thinking about painting a painting for, like, finding a cup or a saucer or something pretty or plants to paint, it's like, give yourself a situation. Think about during the day when things are ordinary to become extraordinary, like early morning when you think about, most houses are built so that their kitchen is facing east. I don't know, most of you probably have never really realized that. But most people want sun in their kitchen in the morning because that's where you spend your mornings. And oftentimes you'll have a breakfast nook that'll be facing east so you could get morning light into your breakfast room. And then you think about, oh yes. You think about, Leave It to Beaver, when Dad used to read newspapers, and you probably can remember that your father might have been sitting there having breakfast with you at one time. Had a pair of glasses and a cup of coffee, and all of a sudden you can almost sense the room, the time of day. That's a real powerful place to create something. Is create something that's a memory or something that triggers good feelings. So I said, well, let's set up a table where you have light coming through the table. The light coming through the window onto the table. How would you do that? So it's there again too, I didn't say paint things. It's all about light. And so the objects that are in this still life are either blocking light, or they cause light to do things. They're an effect of some kind that's generated from light hitting them. Or the light coming through the window itself. So students that I coach and I give this homework assignment to, they'll actually even have these panes that are coming through, with the light on it. And I go, how did you get the panes? You can actually see the panes of the window. And they'll take a piece of cardboard and they'll cut panes into them and set it up with a tripod and then shine the light from beyond that so that the panes go across. So they're not even real. They create the effect that we want in a painting. So you have to make that kind of effort. Think about it. And you guys, once I said you have panes from the window coming through, you guys could visualize, wow, that'd be really cool. Because we know what that kind of looks like. But how do you do that? You have to set it up that way. I think what's missing is just like the storytelling of it. You've spent a lot of time really developing your painting, you're putting paint on the canvas. Now it's time to really think artistically. And that's, like putting panes across. I mean, my students spend weeks on their setups. I have one gal, oh my God, she's just amazing. I told her to paint love. Oh my God, it's crazy. It's love. Love. And she has this statue of two lovers with all this beautiful, she's from India, and so all this beautiful India jewelry and all this stuff going on, and then a love letter from her husband with roses and pearls and just like the whole thing's just dripping. It's just You've got to just put more into it, more into the idea. And I'm not picking on you. My thing is just, it's not for you, it's for everybody. And the thing is, what we want to do is kind of think, but what if, how could we turn it around? And the thing is, it provides us, an opportunity to talk about, but what if? Even if this was great, I'd still go, but what if we did this? You might have had all the props there, but you wouldn't have the light right. You wouldn't have the panes coming through the window.
That's a neat idea.
It is a neat idea, but it requires a lot of production stuff. So as far as you painting from life, awesome.
Yeah.
Great job. You're getting better all the time. I think it helps also that when you bring your objects in, you're attached to them.
Yeah.
Although I made your bear look really gay. I put the big bow on and then put those are placemats that make them look like wings. And we put some flowers in there. So, I turned your teddy bear into a gay bear. But I apologize, and hopefully he doesn't require any... You're a therapist, so you could help him through it. Okay. But the thing is, where's the central focal point?
Between his nose and his eye.
Well, the thing is, when we're working with animals, or figures, or dolls, or anything, the eyes always are the central focal point, period. So it's just a real simple question. But then the secondary focal point would be the light falling on here. Now, what you want to do is always create an interesting story where, like, this bear is sitting in a children's room, and all of a sudden the door opens up and the light falls on just a partial part of the bear. Okay. So by highlighting the top part and putting the shadow at the bottom, it just feels a little bit more interesting than just having the light over the whole thing. This painting looks completely different than all the other bear paintings. And Mary's paintings, when you watch her paint, she kind of paints real honestly. She doesn't interpret much. She kind of paints and people are fascinated by, wow, you really made that look like that. Because she just doesn't interpret it. She paints what she sees without prejudice. And she just paints it. She didn't question, okay, I'm going to leave that towel out. She put it in. And the thing is, this is only partial. Mary works very small hours on her paintings, but the few hours that she doesn't waste her time. She might come over and put in six brush strokes, But those 6 brushstrokes are as accurate as she could possibly do at that moment. And then she flitters away somewhere for an hour. And then she comes back again and does 6 more. And she could do almost as much as some other people do because they're constantly working on it. But those few brushstrokes, and I've watched her, they're not, by gosh, by golly. She's like, there it is. If you like to take your painting to the next level, regardless at whatever level you are, please feel free to contact me at 415-606-9074. Join us on our website at www.thegrandview.org and get more information about our show. There you can download our free book, Everything You Need to Know About Outdoor Painting.